Good morning. Welcome to the morning show.
Morning.
Look at everyone. Appreciate Pastor Dave. He is wearing flannel this morning, so fall has officially set in.
Yeah, I think it's arriving today, right? Yesterday was like 80 degrees,
Arriving?
and then today is what's the high? Like 60 something,
I don't know.
which is still relatively warm, right? Could be.
I mean, for Ohio Midwest weather, yeah, like we're still summer weather. You got to drop below like 45 to get into.
Yeah, I'm ready for fall though, so I'm kind of trying to bring it in, you know.
Yeah, but you're
Prepping.
late according to your wife's timetable.
Yeah, it
'Cause
started in May. I think is when it started. Yeah.
Pumpkin spice
We've
started.
already invested heavily in Hobby Lobby fall decorations.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. We've talked about this before. I don't understand why Hobby Lobby, like, I don't understand their summer. Like, everything's always on sale. Like, everything you walk through has, like, a 40% off. And then you have the sticker, the coupon thing.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal. You should take advantage.
All right, so let us celebrate. Tonight is a big presidential debate. It is a fun, must-see television thing to watch.
Yes.
So here's the question.
All right.
What is the best food to have for the presidential debate? What do you eat, right? This is like the Super Bowl party for those of us who are political nerds.
Well, if you've seen the promotional commercials for the debate, I mean, it's promoted as if it is the Super Bowl.
It is.
So I feel like at this point, and we know that, with the with the people that are involved in this, with President Trump in this is not going to be a boring debate.
Oh no.
So I feel like you can comfortably just go straight Super Bowl food.
All right. So what do you put on the spread? Are we just doing chips and dip?
Yeah, chips and dip. Maybe some buffalo dip.
Okay.
Wings, pizza. It's all on the table, really. We're
going full out.
I don't see any reason you can't go full out.
All right.
I mean, are you trying to be more formal? Or are you going like tea and crumpets?
I'm a tea and crumpets guy. You got to put the pinky out when you're having your proper tea and crumpets. And a scone, right? With the proper jam between the biscuits. That is a proper scone. No, I'm probably a popcorn guy. I think it's more entertainment value of popcorn, not so much.
Okay, yeah, that's true. You can do the popcorn. Now, are you gonna watch?
I mean, it comes on at what, 9 o'clock tonight?
9 o'clock, yeah, 9 o'clock.
I might be awake for that.
You might be awake, yeah.
I want to watch it because I feel like there will be so many sound bites that we will hear that it's better to hear them live.
Yeah, and it's the bigger the stage, the better. It seems like the president does, so I think this will be fun. Well.
Yeah.
And there is all of these rumors of how many of these are they really going to do? It's maybe the one shot. I don't know.
One shot. So I also want to, before we kick over the interview, one other random thing to jibber jabber about. So in a little bit of show prep, found out that a certain excellent Star Wars movie is being played in national theaters.
So it's national? It's everywhere?
At least around Columbus, yeah. Episode 5, by the way, Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, the best Star Wars movie. No
That's
debate
the
about
second
this.
one.
Second one released, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Because we don't talk about prequels. So it's in theater. Go support. It's not like Lucas doesn't have enough money already. Actually, Disney's getting the money now. So anyways. So in this pandemic thing, because Hollywood movies have all been postponed, they're re-releasing movies in a theater. So the question was, what movie would you want to see released that you want to see on the big screen that maybe you missed, or just would be great to see all over again on the big screen?
I have no idea. This is why I don't do Fast Five questions. I don't know.
A good Fast Five question.
I don't know. You think of those ones that are like the big, like a Jaws or maybe original Jurassic Park or something that's like got
Jurassic Park's a good one.
Something that's kind of got the
which still, the CGI for that still kind of holds up.
Yeah. Well, you should ask these guys.
All right,
production
crew. Reagan, Chad, what do you want to see on the big screen?
Wizard of Oz.
Sound of Music. I could be okay with that one. I was thinking
Wizard of Oz.
I was thinking like the Goonies.
The Goonies. Goonies was kind of weird.
I gotta see the Goonies on the big screen.
To me, it's like I would love if they did all three Lord of the Rings. Like
You just won't leave the theater. You'll be there for like a week.
You gotta wear your Depends to get through. Are we doing the extended release edition?
Yes, definitely. That's what they should definitely put on.
So all of your beard hair will be gray by the time. You
Right.
will be Gandalf the Gray by the end of
I
this.
will be Gandalf by the end.
Okay.
Reagan,
that
you got nothing? You got to come up with something. You've had at least 20 seconds to think about it.
Come on.
Think about a movie from your childhood, you know?
It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to come up with one. I was going to say one from like last year.
You did not say the prequels, did you?
What prequels?
Oh, okay.
Either 4, 5, or 6.
Okay.
Maybe 4.
Oh, that's right. He's a huge Star. You guys are the Star Wars nerds.
Well, I was gonna say because your dad is a huge Star Wars fan and a good friend of the show, actual friend, not like poster wall of the friend of the show, who would have like seriously disowned you had you said, "Let's go watch episode 2 again." So kudos for you, sir.
When's the new? Is there another Star Wars coming out? Is there rumors of that
They've
yet?
completed the Skywalker saga.
But we're gonna continue with Rey because she's not technically it, right?
I guess you could do.
Called herself the Skywalker.
That's true. That's
We're
awesome.
losing.
And she gets a
viewers
yellow sign.
every minute.
That's
They don't care.
We care because we love you guys. Thank you so much for watching today. So we are going to be kicking over to Mr. Ben Northcutt in just a second. Excuse me, Dr. Ben.
We gotta find
Northcutt.
out what movie
I gotta
he
see
wants
it.
to see on the big screen.
Oh, that would be an
That's the
excellent
first
question. Hey guys, drop some questions. Make sure you are liking and following us on Facebook and all of the other random places, Twitter and YouTube. All right, you ready to go to the interview?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go to the interwebs of sunny Minnesota. Hello, Dr. Northcutt.
Hey guys,
Welcome to the morning show. Thanks for coming on, sir.
good to be here.
So, in full disclosure, you and I have a little bit of history, right?
A little bit of history, but I've heard this is a PG show, so I don't think we can go into that.
That's
We're
not
just,
even remotely awkward now.
We're just impressed to actually meet the first real one of Rob's friends. We assumed they were all imaginary.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
He's just... He does it. He didn't back you up there, Rob. It was more kind of like I agree with you.
You need friends that can rebuke you and give you accountability.
Oh, man.
And this was Ben's job.
That's great.
Right.
So let's go through some of your highlights here. You are a graduate of New Orleans Seminary, the best seminary in all of the world. You have your PhD from Southern Seminary. By the way, what was your PhD in?
My PhD was in family ministry.
Family ministry. So like how to give out animal crackers on Sunday morning?
Animal crackers. Yeah. So we had an entire seminar on flannel graphs.
Yes.
Nice. Yes.
That is why Southern is a traditional seminary, right? They went flannel graph. They didn't go smartboard, flannel graph.
What was your
Flannel graphs 201.
What was your dissertation on?
Did you hear that? What was your dissertation on?
My dissertation was on a phenomenon called online disinhibition, which has been around since about 2004. So this is going to be one of stop me because I will nerd out really hard on this. But online disinhibition is a phenomenon that observes that a significant group of the population are less inhibited in their interaction online compared to face-to-face. And so online disinhibition observes that this tends to be a trend among people in the way they interact. And so then it seeks to figure out what factors play into this and what the limitations are. And my dissertation in particular was looking at pastors and church staff in the way that they interact face-to-face and the way that they interact online, particularly as it relates to self-disclosure. So the degree to which they're willing to self-disclose about themselves or their histories face-to-face versus online, and then compare to those.
Interesting. Have you seen The Social Dilemma?
I have.
That'll make you delete everything online. But
yeah, I mean, it's one of those deeper down the rabbit hole you go,
yeah,
the scarier it gets. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I feel like that should be mandatory reading for like any pastor to before they make a Twitter handle or Facebook. Like, once you put it out there, it's stuck there.
One of the things that I found so interesting was that when you're online, when you're engaging online, because you don't have, in most cases, you're not looking at someone's facial expressions, and often you're not dealing in a time, it's in a more asynchronistic manner. All of those facets, you can really push the line of what would be considered appropriate in a face-to-face interaction and never even realize that you're pushing the line, because it doesn't feel nearly as inappropriate, because those disinhibiting factors aren't as often at play in online interaction. It's scary, because it's not just that we're more willing to be inappropriate, it's that we don't realize how inappropriate we're being.
That's why we do interviews through Zoom calls, because we would have no idea if we pushed the line with any of our guests.
Yeah. We know we pushed the line on Zoom, and at least we know it.
We've had a couple of interviews where we could clearly tell this is going bad quickly.
Terribly. Understand.
So we're reading your face, is what we're telling you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we invited you on to obviously reminisce and poke fun at me. So at any point, feel free to do that. But also, you have a leadership tool that you use with your church family, which is really curious. And so we wanted to kind of hear about it, share it with the audience. So you call it the Invitational Challenge Matrix, which has nothing to do with a better invitation at the end of the sermon.
And nothing to do with a better invitation at the end of the sermon.
The Keanu Reeves movie.
Matrix.
Oh, wow. I missed that one.
You did miss that one.
Sorry, say what?
It had nothing to do with Keanu Reeves and, going down the rabbit hole, take red pill, blue pill, Matrix as well.
It has more to do with Keanu Reeves than invitations at the end of the sermon, we'll say.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. We need to get like a counter like on the screen for every time there's a pop culture reference.
Oh,
just go through the... I'm sorry, sir. So we're going to do something cool. You actually need to draw this out for us, right?
I do. So when we, about 10 years ago or so, we started using a tool-based leadership development as opposed to a program-based leadership development. The primary difference being that we don't, when we teach people how to develop more leaders, we don't give them a sit down and on week one you do this. What we give them or what we try to do is we try to teach them a more comprehensive list of tools that they can pull out of their leadership toolbox whenever they need them, and then apply them to the context at hand. The first one that we always teach is this tool, the Invitation Challenge Matrix, and it deals with how we interact with others, but in particular, how do we interact with those that we have relationships with.
Oh, cool. All right. So let's lay it out. Let's see what this thing looks like.
Jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay. Let me. Okay. So can you guys see? You guys can see the whiteboard?
Yep. You're good to go, sir.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So when we, and by the way, for those watching at home, all 9 to 10 of you, I'm just kidding. No, for those watching at home, I would encourage you to get out a piece of paper and a writing utensil right now. At the end of this, there will be an opportunity for you to engage and to use this in your own life, in your own ministry, or your own leadership, and then also in working along with me. It'll make it easier for the next time that you want to use this with your own team. But if we are disciples of Jesus, then we want to not just look at the things that Jesus said in the Gospels, but we also want to look at the things that Jesus did in the Gospels, and particularly anywhere that we see a pattern in the way that Jesus did a particular thing, we want to do our best to integrate that pattern into our own life. And so when we look at the Gospels, and particularly when we look at this question of how did Jesus relate to others, there are two things that we see Jesus very consistently doing. The first thing that we see Jesus very consistently doing is we see him inviting others into relationship with himself. I realize that's kind of small. If it's too small, I can make it bigger. But
no, you're good.
We see Jesus inviting people into relationship with himself, not inviting them into a group, but inviting them into relationship with himself. We see Jesus going and telling the disciples, come and follow after me, I will make you fishers of men. We see Jesus going into cities and actually inviting himself over to people's houses for dinner, like he did with Zacchaeus. But we see him constantly doing this, constantly inviting people into deeper relationship with himself. The second thing that we see Jesus just consistently doing is we see Jesus consistently challenging others to move forward in the way, in their following of him, and their living out of the kingdom of God, in their righteousness, in any number of things. But we see him constantly challenging those who are listening to him, those who he's in relationship with. We see him constantly challenging them to take another step. Now, perhaps what's most interesting about this is we don't see him balancing these two. We don't see him lessening invitation so as to increase challenge, or vice versa. We see this less as a two-dimensional scale and more as less as a one-dimensional scale and more as a two-dimensional matrix. We see him consistently having high invitation and consistently having high challenge. Now, when we take this and we look, use this same sort of template to look at the way that we relate to others in our own lives, and in particular the environments that we not only create, but that we're a part of, one of the things that we see is in environments in which we have a consistently low level of invitation and also consistently low level of challenge, it creates a boring culture that produces apathy. Now, I've never been good at spelling apathy. Clearly, that's the wrong way to spell it. There we go. I didn't take a seminar in spelling.
It's because you focused all on flannel graph. It's okay.
But I'm sorry?
You focused on flannel graph. That was your major, so it's good.
That's right. Yeah. My main major was flannel graph.
You're good.
Low invitation and low challenge creates a boring culture, produces apathy. However, an environment that has a high degree of invitation but a low degree of challenge produces what we call a cozy culture.
Okay.
And that creates complacency. And we could talk more about what examples of that might be here in a minute. But sure. Flip that on its end, an environment in which we see a high degree of challenge but a low degree of invitation produces a stressed culture. That creates discouragement or frustration. However, when we are able to effectively calibrate a high degree of challenge and a high degree of invitation, it creates a discipling culture that produces empowerment and transformation.
Buzzword.
What?
Buzzword.
Which one?
Transformation.
Transformation. Okay.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah. And so generally at this point, when I'm explaining this to a person or a group of people, teaching leadership or whatnot, what I'll say is what I'm about to say right now, which is Dave and Rob. What I want to do is I want to give you guys 15 seconds to think about a person or a small group of people in your life that you are in relationship with on a consistent basis, that is the type of relationship that you have some degree of control over the dynamics of the relationship. So a relationship with a supervisor may not work as well as a relationship with a an employee or someone who works for you, or a leader that you're leading, or someone you're mentoring, or your children, or a peer, a coworker, someone that you would say that you have some degree of control over the dynamics of the relationship. Actually, don't take 15 seconds, take 5. Same for everyone at home.
Okay. Okay.
Dave, you got it?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Now, what I want you to do is take 20 seconds. If you haven't drawn this matrix out on a piece of paper or on something, then at least visualize it in your mind or look at the one on the screen. But what I want you to do is I want you to place not just which quadrant that relationship would go into, but where within the quadrant. Top left corner, bottom right-hand corner, top right-hand corner, somewhere in the middle. And do that by asking these 2 questions of how much of in the way that I relate to them, and particularly in a relationship, in any of these relationships, it might be that the way you relate to the person and the way the person relates to you would be different. What I want you to think about is the way that you relate to the person. So not just which quadrant, but where within the quadrant, how close to the line.
Well, Hey Ben, let's ask a question real quick though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you kind of paint a little bit of a picture for the other 3 cultures? So the cozy culture, the boring culture,
absolutely,
and the stress
absolutely.
culture.
So the boring culture is the hardest to define because most of the time, if we have the choice of whether or not to engage in a relationship or engage in an environment, things that create boring cultures, we just choose not to engage in.
Okay.
The one that I most commonly use as an example, particularly for people in the church, is the stereotypical Sunday school class from when we were children. That the teacher wasn't really engaged, never really learned anything, just had to go.
Okay. All right. And the cozy culture?
Cozy culture is the stereotypical evangelical church small group. So we want to do everything we can possibly do to be warm and welcoming and inviting, but we're not going to challenge anybody. We're not going to let it get personal. We're not going to actually challenge people to change in their lives. Our primary goal here is just to be warm and welcoming. We want people to want to come back. That's the stereotypical cozy culture.
And the stress culture.
Do what?
And the stress culture?
So the stress culture is the easiest examples are either work or school. Again, for most of us, if we actually have a choice, we won't engage in a stressed culture, which I just realized I misspelled stressed, but that's okay.
I like it. It's the French pronunciation of stress.
That's right. That's right. So think of an environment in which you don't really have a choice. You have to go. And the person who is above you, the person who's overseeing you or feeding into you, isn't engaged in you on a personal level, but their expectations of you are high.
Got it.
So maybe a sports team, maybe a classroom, maybe a work environment.
Okay.
We all have had those in our lives.
Okay.
And then discipling culture is what discipling culture is. It's an environment where we both feel drawn in, and also as we look backward, we see change resulting in whatever. Sometimes a lot of people relate to a discipling culture as a workout group that they really enjoyed and that they felt connected to, but that they were constantly being challenged to lift more weight or run farther or those kinds of things. Sometimes a class, sometimes a discipleship group or a relationship with a good coach or a good mentor. Any of those kinds of things.
Well, let's flip back to you for a second. Let's see your.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that you've kind of figured out for a second. Oh, we'll wait till you get back on.
Sure.
Oh, he's there.
Oh, you're here. No. Flip back to your screen. I want to see you.
Oh yeah, we're good.
This is. There he is. That was a glamour shot photo right there.
It was.
Old school reference. So walk through this for a second. Like that's an incredible tool. And clearly we all want to be moving towards, the upper right quadrant of high invitation and high challenge. So but there's a challenge in there right now. For those who aren't paying attention, we're in the midst of a pandemic, where whatever your level of comfortability being face to face, right? Because you just talked about online whatever that word is, right?
Yeah.
And so getting online is going to be hard to connect. We can't relationally see as much as we can, so that invitation thing's going to be really hard online. But being in person is also challenging too. So I know you guys have been wrestling with that a little bit within your own church context. What are some things you guys have learned?
So one of the things that we have learned is, particularly on the challenge side, we've learned that the Holy Spirit is the best challenger. And a lot of times we can ask very general challenge, not even necessarily challenge-based questions, but very general questions to get people thinking about what is it that God's been saying to me this week. A lot of times we'll do something like a book club online,
right?
And the rather than using all of the standard questions, we'll just start out and we'll just ask people what stood out to you as you read this. Doesn't matter what piece of it was, doesn't matter if it really even was something that the book was saying. What stood out to you? And in their response, what will come back is essentially something that either connected with them personally or something that they care about, or sometimes just something that they found interesting. But through chasing that rabbit, what we wind up with at least 7 times out of 10 is something that they read connected with something that the Lord has been doing in their life. And then from there, it's a lot easier to, okay, so what do you feel like the Lord might be calling you to, how might the Lord be calling you to respond in obedience this week?
Okay.
That's one of the things that we have found is that God is it's not that we didn't realize it before, but just a reminder that God is always at work. And if we can get people to look toward what God is doing and how God is challenging them, then our personal, more specific challenge isn't as weighty. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. Like you're trying to train people to hear the Holy Spirit better.
Yeah.
Whereas they try to look for and hear from a lot of other random things, but getting back to what is the Holy Spirit putting on your heart, and being attentive to that and stop ignoring it. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I was going to ask you, within that matrix, so you mentioned the upper left-hand corner is the stereotypical small group where it's cozy, but not necessarily a lot of challenge. So how do you, in that context, maybe of a small group or a Sunday school class or just, that sort of a format, how do you develop that high level of challenge? I feel like a lot of people say they want it, but they don't want it. And then there's that balance of it's hard to force it. Some of it seems to have to happen organic, but how do you really create the environment for that to happen organically, and to have that high level of challenge?
Yeah, and specifically in Sunday school classes and small groups and those kinds of environments, the two most common things that I teach my leaders to introduce into the group to increase that level of challenge. Number one is that when it comes to the application time of the lesson, and every lesson, at least that LifePoint or any of those companies put out, there's always okay, what do we do with this section of the lesson? And what I teach my leaders to do is if the question is, what do we do with this? It's way too easy for an individual to deflect off of myself and answer what other people should do with this, or what a stereotypical person in this kind of scenario might do with this. And so in all of our groups that aren't one-offs, in other words, the groups that are fairly consistent from week to week, we teach our leaders to almost be a little hard with the people in their group and force the answer to the question to be, what does this have to do with me? In other words, the question is not how should this affect our life, but how is this affecting me? And even to the point of when people start to answer, I really feel like we should, our leaders will, hey, look, that's not to discourage your thought, but that's not where we are right now. Where we are right now is me. Can you take that and personalize it? Do you feel like that's something that God might be saying to you personally? And I'll be honest, that's an awkward, particularly in our culture, it's so normative to use we second person language because it's less confrontational, to force people to deal with what do I feel like God is saying to me as a result of what we looked at, or as a result of what the scripture says, is difficult. And there is a growth curve. There's a growth curve, but once you get to that point, it really helps to affect the way people personalizing that invitation. The second thing that I teach my leaders to do, and it doesn't work in all environments, but particularly environments that are either closed groups or quasi-closed groups, they really are very much the same people every week, is when someone says when someone says this week, I really feel like the Lord is leading me to do X, that leader writes that down in their own personal notebook, and the following week, before we ever start what we're doing this week, that leader says, hey, Joe, last week you mentioned you really felt like the Lord was leading you to do X. How did that go?
Yes.
Not did you do it, but how did that go? And that forces Joe to either respond and recognize, hey, there was some growth in my life this week, or it forces him to say, honestly, I just didn't. I didn't do that. In which case, it forces him to recognize what we are doing here is about more than just what happens in this hour. What happens in this hour is meant to affect what happens for the next 7 days.
That's good.
That's that much challenge, but those are sort of the two rhythms that come to mind.
It's good because it starts to affect an accountability culture within your group.
Right, yeah, and I think a lot of times it's those subtle, small changes, just how you ask something or word something or checking in on something that does change. We're always looking for like this massive, overhaul, and a lot of times it's just those little subtle changes of how you ask something, following up, that really do begin to change the way people think and then change the culture of it. So yeah, that's awesome.
So I was going to ask another kind of random question, and a lot of leadership manuals and Maxwell and all of these big guys, right? They talk about this idea that you have to earn credits before you spend credits, right? This idea that you have to earn the respect and solve the little problems of whatever the relationship with the group, and then that gives you the opportunity to speak into whatever you're trying to transform and fix, right? So in that, because in this matrix thing you're introducing to us, there's I need to be really close to you, but I need to challenge you at the same time. So is there like a chicken or egg thing? Is it a both and? Like how's that work?
No, it's not chicken or egg. Invitation definitely, in our culture, invitation leads challenge. Now, what's interesting is, and Rob, you with your missional background, you actually could probably speak to this even better. It's actually not true that in all cultures, invitation leads challenge. There are cultures that are very apt to, where someone's very apt to put themselves in a relationship where they're expecting a high degree of challenge and not expecting a high degree of invitation. But for our culture, we tend to be repulsed somewhat, maybe repulsed is too strong a word, but repulsed by relationships that are high challenge, that are higher challenge than invitation. And so particularly relating to Americans, it is important to recognize that if I calibrate challenge too high, if I calibrate challenge high but invitation not very high, it's likely that this relationship is not going to last very long.
Right.
However, the flip side of that is just as true. When I establish a relationship with someone, particularly with a group of people in an environment like a small group or a Sunday school class or a leadership team or even my staff. I've been on staff at the church that I'm currently serving in St. Paul for, it'll be a year at the end of 2020. And so when I first came into the staff, I knew if I just engage in invitation and try to build up that big deposit, that big, invitation bank account, what I'm doing is I'm establishing a norm or a dynamic in this culture that this is a high invitation, low challenge culture. And then coming in later and trying to up the challenge is much harder than just establishing from the beginning that the dynamics of this relationship is high. I very much want to invite you into relationship with me, but I'm always going to be challenging you in something.
So it's more about keeping the proportion.
And I'm asking that you do the same for me. I'm wanting you to do the same for me. Speaking in the language of the illustration you just used, my recommendation would be that you very much do, keep your bank account in the black, but keep it as close to zero as possible. Don't be inviting, and then make one huge challenge. Make a little invitation and a little challenge, and a little invitation and a little challenge, and just go ahead and establish that norm of dynamic.
No, I think it's a good word, and to your point about contextualizing it, you're right. Not only every culture, but every person's going to respond a little bit differently to the matrix. And so for one person, you might need to have a little bit more challenge than invitation part, because that's what gets them going. They're kinesthetic in their learning process, right? But for some people, they might be more relational, and so you have to keep that one. And so really it's keeping the matrix there, right? Your continuum between these two things, and let that be what you're adjusting to get the result that you need in making the disciple. So there might be a little fine tuning for each person, but yeah, I appreciate that.
The other thing to recognize as a leader is that almost all of us tend to be more naturally inviting or more naturally challenging.
Is this the new Enneagram? Is that what you're giving us? I'm sorry? Is this the new Enneagram? Is that what you're giving us?
No. See, there's 2 and then there's 9. And I realize it's difficult now. But no. Everyone that I've ever developed with or worked with tends to be more naturally inviting or more naturally challenging. And as a leader in particular, it's important to realize which of those I am, because it is safe for me to. So I know that myself, I am more naturally invitational than I am challenging, which means I don't really. With most people in most relationships, I don't have to put a lot of intention into being inviting, because I know that I'm naturally going to do that. Most of my intention has to be in challenging. Now, I've done this so long that I'm the challenging part is kind of secondhand as well now. Sure. But if I'm going to be intentional in a relationship, I know that 99 times out of 100, I have to be intentional on the challenging side, because God made me inviting.
Yeah.
On his own.
Well, sir, you've done an excellent job explaining something very theological and very helpful for the church. We're now completely going to unredeem the time.
Beautiful.
What you just shared with us. So this is a segment that we call Fast Five, where I ask you 5 completely unrelated questions.
I've heard about this.
Are you prepared for this?
Well, I've heard that the whole idea is you can't be prepared for this.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And I did not pull any punches. I did shy away from things that would be embarrassing, mostly because you know a lot of embarrassing stuff about
embarrassing
me.
about Rob. That's what he shied away from.
So
yeah. Are we gonna take Fast Five? Does Fast Five go both ways?
Ooh, yes, it definitely should.
I will give you one question.
One question.
You may use it at any time, sir.
Excellent.
Are you ready for your first question?
I am.
All right. If an escalator is out of order, why doesn't it just become stairs?
Ooh. Yeah, because if you really work hard enough, you could still climb the rope of an escalator. It's more of an upper body workout as opposed to stairs, which are more of a lower body workout. It's really together. It's more of a full body workout.
That was
Okay.
sure. I like that. You were in the spirit of these questions. Question number 2, because I know you. More iconic role for Richard Dean Anderson, MacGyver or Colonel Jack O'Neill?
Oh, Rob, what's the only, from my perspective, what is the only correct answer to this question?
No.
It's Colonel Jack O'Neill.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Undoubtedly,
No.
it's the only role that he didn't have a mullet. I mean, come on.
Here's the question I have. Who is Colonel Jack O'Neill?
Okay, so that's a fair point.
No, literally. Who? I don't know. Who are we talking about? What show is
11
this from?
seasons of Stargate.
Stargate
Stargate.
SG-1. So
I'm proud to not know that. All right, number 3.
there was many a time where we should have been writing papers watching SG-1. So a little bit of
MacGyver's like the most iconic role of the 90s. I don't know how you guys are. I don't know how you don't go that way.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Okay, all right.
There are some early references in the early season of SG-1 where they make reference about MacGyver, so it's a true thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a little
That's
crossover.
well played.
All right, so before I go further down the trivia wiki hole, question number 3: why do we cook bacon and bake cookies?
Ooh, that's a great. Well, based upon what premise are we saying that we don't bake bacon? I mean, really, if you really want bacon,
yes.
If you really want bacon,
yes.
Then you put your aluminum foil on the baking pan, and you put it under the broiler, and you make like 1.5 pounds of bacon at a time.
Right.
And then you just sit and watch Stargate and eat bacon.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, Ben has like 20 children, so that's how he's learned to cook so much bacon in a little amount of time.
That is
how many do you actually have?
Don't we have this? Don't you have 4 kids too now, Rob?
I have a plethora. Yeah, I'm up to 5 at the moment.
Are you up to 5?
I'm up to 5.
Man,
I'm glad to always be in those conversations because I have 6. So I pretty much always hold the trump card.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
I've got 4.
Oh, lightweight. Come on.
I know.
I mean, you're still in man-to-man defense. I mean, come on, you got to get up the zone, man.
One of the guys that I did my PhD work, fantastic guy, is a campus pastor at Campus Crusade for Christ. But he's got he has 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. And his daughter, when she was a teenager, was really sassy, really sassy and really quick. And we were riding an elevator together on campus, and he asked his daughter, so how many kids are you going to have? And she said, 5, quitter.
That is now my goal for my daughter.
I want my daughter to be that.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
until she
have daughters.
is.
I don't want my daughter to be that.
Hey, so speaking of your children, this is question number 4. What's the most random thing your kids have done at church?
The most random thing?
Yeah.
Most random thing my kids have done at church.
Or embarrassing.
Well, so my family sits on the they sit on the front row on the left-hand side, and they're always sitting there. And I have to be careful not to look down at my kids while I'm preaching, because there is no telling where their hands are. Just no telling.
I can't touch that one.
Yeah. Gotta let that one go.
All right. So your beautiful wife Jess, you guys have been married how long now?
It will be 13 years in June, so we just passed 12.
Nice. All right. So, what's the worst gift you ever bought your wife?
Yeah. The worst gift I ever bought my wife was cable TV.
Oh boy.
My first. So you gotta understand. Jess and I got married after my first year of seminary at New Orleans.
Yeah, you left me. You abandoned me.
Good choice.
You didn't make it to my wedding.
There it is.
Ow.
There it is. I knew it was coming.
No, so we got married. We knew we wanted to have kids. We knew we wanted to have multiple children. But we thought, let's be smart about this and wait until I'm done with seminary. 3 months later, we were pregnant with number one.
You were, or she was? You said we.
What?
You said we. You meant her, right?
Jess and I, yeah. Jess and I were pregnant with number one. We celebrated our first anniversary 2 weeks before our first child was born. And so I thought, hey, anniversary, let's get cable TV. She says that was a present to myself, not to her.
Was that just for like
is not
baseball,
entirely wrong.
football, and Battlestar Galactica or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all right. So I will. You've wonderfully done an amazing job with 5 questions, sir. You've your soul for us and our audience. In all fairness, I will give you one question.
Beautiful.
Don't waste it. Don't waste it.
What is your one question?
So your one question is, what is the one reference or the one story that you were really hoping that I wouldn't bring up?
Do I have to answer honestly? I will share this much as a story that I know you're referencing here. Ben is an incredible friend who loved to pull pranks on me all the time. To which we did pranks on our professors. We did, here I'm deflecting.
He's deflecting.
We had an intro to Hebrew together, and our professor was always like, context. Like, you cannot interpret without context. And so we made T-shirts and transliterated the word context and put it on our T-shirts and walked in for our final exam wearing the T-shirt. The problem was we were goobers and had not written it in correct Hebrew backwards. So our professor's just staring at us for the whole exam like we're cheating, but he's really just trying to figure out the bad Hebrew on our T-shirts. Yeah, so those are kind of random things we did.
So what's the personal one? You can't make it about we, Rob. What about you?
So Ben, in the guys' dorm, there were shower stalls, and Ben snuck in one day and stole all of my clothes.
That I did.
While I was trying to take a shower, and so I'm forced with, what do I do? In the guy's dorm, as my best friend has stolen all of my clothing.
It's true. I find it interesting that of all the stories you could have told, that's the one you picked.
Why? What should I have said?
I don't know. I something about a green light keeps coming to my mind. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, thank you. Although that would get you in more trouble than it does with me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can reminisce later. What?
No, you're very good, sir. thank you very much for coming on our show, for giving us an incredible tool. We have stuff on the page. How can we, I know a lot of things are kind of I don't want to say temperamental. There's tumultuous. That's the word I'm looking for. Kind of in the Minneapolis area right now. You guys are how far outside of Minneapolis?
I mean, we are right on the border of St. Paul. Okay. So we're within 10 minutes of downtown Minneapolis.
So how can we pray for your church family, sir?
I would say to remember that God really is in control. I mean, I stopped praying for comfort a long time ago. I stopped praying that God would make life easier for myself or my family or my church because I see it's so often it's not in the easy times that people grow and the goodness of God goes on display. It's in the really, really tough stuff. And so we don't around here. We don't really pray that God would decrease difficulty. What we pray is that we would more adequately remember who God is in the midst of that. And so I would ask that your church and our audience this morning would pray for the followers of Jesus in Minneapolis and St. Paul, that in the midst of rioting, in the midst of looting, in the midst of racial tension, in the midst of political tension, that the followers of Jesus would remember and lean into who God is and live out of that.
Very good, sir. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I will catch up with you later.
Love you guys.
All right, see you later, sir.
Thank you. All right, that was fun.
That was only slightly awkward on my part.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to come back on.
We're just gonna.
That's a pretty cool
move
tool. I mean, there was a redeemable part. That's an excellent.
Yeah, no, and that's a good way to think about it is, and I think especially, I think right away for me thinking about that in groups, because obviously in the church context, that's the big part of where discipleship happens is in groups. And that's a good word to say that's the goal. We don't want just high invitation. We also want high challenge, and making sure that is, that's where it happens.
Yeah, and I think even for parents.
Yeah.
When I was talking with Ben about it yesterday, we think about the relationship we're having with our kids, and if they're not really like transforming in discipleship or they're not like obeying us, whatever, like to look at that, like, have I really gone low on the invitation part with my kids and really high on the expectation and challenge part? Well,
right.
No wonder there's frustration or apathy. Like, I haven't really connected with them. So a lot of application for that. It was a good tool.
It's good. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful to you, and you can find a good way to use that, implement some of that in your groups, your relationships, and all that. So next week,
Dr. Allen?
We got Dr. Jason Allen, President Midwestern. If you follow the show very closely, you may have been expecting him today, but we bumped him the next week. They have their large once-a-year annual conference this week, so we didn't want to conflict with that. So he'll be on next Tuesday. And then what are we doing the rest of the month?
So we have JT English.
Yeah, so the end of the month will be JT English, just reading a book, Deep Discipleship, talking about how to get the church to go deeper in the Word. That'll be a great conversation. He's also on the Knowing Faith podcast, pretty well-known podcast. Before him, we're going to have Dr. Todd Chipman, already our first. We haven't actually told him yet, but we're assuming he's going to say yes.
He knows now.
He'll be our first repeat guest.
It's like second First Baptist.
Yeah, right? He'll be our first repeat guest.
He will be our first repeat guest. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, and he just came up with a new book, The Storyline of Scripture. And so we're going to talk about that. How do we trace throughout the whole of Scripture?
We're going to need a new title for that, because he can't be a friend of the show, because that's a derogatory term.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to get him a mug or something.
Yes.
And he'll be in studio, hopefully. That's the game plan, hopefully, if we can pull that off. That's what we're shooting for anyway, is to have him in studio.
Cool beans.
So we have to figure out the details of that. But
so we are excited to have guests. Make sure you guys are sharing the show, liking it on Facebook, talking about it. Send us questions. We love it. Thank you so much for all the questions and comments you guys send in. We do pay attention to them and see them as they come in. Those of you who do not watch it live, so just because you're delayed in watching, do not think you're not participating. We still want to see you there. If you have any suggestions for things we talk about on the show, guests you want to bring on, please leave this in the comment section. As always, we are still trying to collect our 6 Southern Baptist Seminary presidents. We have 2, we need 4 more, and only you can help us.
Wow.
So email them, badger them, whatever you have to do.
Do not do that.
We want them on. So this is, you have the power, in a nice He-Man reference. Have I?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Okay. All right, guys. See you next week.
Have a good week.